Welcome to another ASMR video. It's been a while since I've done one of these. I knew I wasn't going to be able to do it weekly like I originally planned. But I do enjoy doing these videos, so I'll do them every now and then. I feel like I have enough thoughts that I write down on my phone to be able to just go off those notes for every one of these videos. Originally, when I started doing these videos, I thought that I was gonna have to come up with different topics and different ideas to talk about for each video. But I think in reality, I prefer to just go off my notes. It's a little bit more random, but I think I prefer it that way. And another interesting thing that I can do every now and then is what I'm going to be doing in this video, which is replying to an email that somebody sent me. So someone emailed me today, actually, in response to my last video, and they had some thoughts on the things that I was saying, and I thought that some of her thoughts were interesting. It's quite a long email, so I don't know how long it's going to take me to get through this. Hopefully a decent length of time to hit my usual half-an-hour goal. I'm going to go through it paragraph by paragraph and kind of reply to each one with any thoughts I might have. And I figured that this would be an interesting way. I can do this in the future with just comments as well. But if anybody does have any lengthy thoughts on anything that I say in my videos, then feel free to email me. I'm always happy to read, and I might do a video like this on your emails. So I'm just going to jump straight into it. Okay. Dear Handsome Ben, or whatever your real name is, I got to watch your video where you talked about your philosophical notes. I really admired how you were able to articulate your thoughts and your courage in talking about them. I appreciate that. I've always thought that my ability to articulate things has been something that I'm happy I have. When I was younger, actually, it used to really irritate me when I had thoughts and I wasn't able to sort of put them into words. So I don't know if it was ever a conscious decision that I made to improve on that area, but that is kind of one of the reasons why I do these videos. Although I don't really think it requires any courage on my part. Honestly, I'm just sat here rambling about things that are going on in my head, so I can resonate with some of the ideas you presented, such as, I'm also really bad at reading, such as that of our personal realities built on our perceptions. I know this is one of the points of contention in philosophy, whether there is a real objective world out there, or the world as we know it is just something that we built in our minds. I do agree that our subjective realities can be so powerful that it becomes true for us. Like if we believe that stimulus A will hurt us, it holds power over us and influences our behaviors in relation to that stimulus, even if others will tell us not to worry about it. Of course, there is such a thing as being as a self-fulfilling prophecy, that what we believe influences how we act, which brings on a chain of events that ultimately brings what we have believed to fruition. So that is something that I think about a lot, this idea of perspective. It's one of those words that has over time come to mean something very significant to me. A lot of words like that, I think the same goes for freedom, is a very big word for me. So a lot of people, they're just words, and sometimes they're even kind of cheesy in the context of philosophy or psychology or self-help or whatever. But to me, because I've thought so deeply about them, when I hear those words, they really invoke something in me, and they mean something significant to me. So perspective is one of those words. It's definitely a very deep word for me personally, and I do really believe that it's a massive thing. I mean, the power of perspective, if you want to phrase it like that, is huge, because in theory, you could see anything in reality as either positive or negative, as the best thing in the world or the worst thing in the world, and it doesn't even really matter what it is. All that matters is the perspective. I think having that separation between the thing and then the perspective is huge, because so many people spend their lives going through their life with this mentality that certain things are just inherently good or bad or right or wrong or any specific way. Whereas I think if you get to a point where you understand that whether anything is good or bad or right or wrong from, to anyone, is just a matter of perspective. And, like I said, in theory, that can go for anything, no matter how horrible and painful and uncomfortable something might be. Theoretically, it could be seen as a positive thing, depending on your perspective. And when you combine that idea with the idea of actually having control over your perspective and being able to consciously change the way that you perceive things, then it becomes an extremely powerful tool to deal with issues in life. Now, this is going to come up again later in the email, I believe, but I suppose I should maybe mention that I'm not officially educated in matters of philosophy or psychology. I'm, amateur. Everything that I say is literally just the shit that's in my head. It's really, I don't get any of these from books or from philosophers of history or psychologists or university or anything. I'm just a guy that has weird thoughts, and I talk about them, So a lot of what this woman is talking about seems to be from a source of philosophy as a subject, almost. So she mentions here that one of the points of contention in philosophy is whether there's a real objective world or whether everything is just how we perceive it. It's kind of sort of like a self-built thing that exists really just within our minds. Obviously, I wouldn't know whether that was any contention there because I'm not involved in the world of philosophy. Okay, the next paragraph is, I agree on some points about what you said about opinions, but at the same time I disagree on others. I do agree that opinions can be different, and engaging in arguments can be a waste of time. I was thinking though, does it always have to be either I sway you to my side or you sway me to your side? When we dialogue with an open mind, can we negotiate and arrive at an understanding where points of my argument and your points are melded so that we arrive at a new level of understanding that is more nuanced and acceptable to both of us, superior to our separate original ones? Also, if opinion is backed up by empirical evidence and consensus, does that not make the opinion cease being an opinion because it's now a fact? So I think I mentioned, it's been actually a very long time since I filmed it, but I believe I was talking about how it's kind of pointless to debate or argue with people when it comes to your opinions, because you can't prove that your opinion is ever right or correct because it's just an opinion. And so surely the only logical reason why you would do it is if you're trying to convince the other person that your opinion is better than their opinion, which of course is what, a reason that a lot of people do it. I think when I was thinking back then, if I remember correctly, I was speaking about politics more specifically. I think I just look at that kind of thing often and see that it leads nowhere so often, and that's why I had the opinion that it's really a pointless thing to do. Of course, that's not the case all the time. As you say, if two people engage in an open-minded debate about something philosophical, then of course that can help to broaden both of the people's minds. And if they are both, actively trying to find a way to incorporate both separate ideas into one new, more evolved idea, then that of course could also be better. With something like this, it just depends entirely on the reasons why you're doing it. Like I said, I think when I was making this video, I was talking more specifically about what I was thinking about politics. And most of the time in politics, it doesn't seem like anybody ever wants to compromise, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. At the end of the day, if you have an opinion and you believe that your opinion is right, you have no reason to ever change that opinion. You're not obligated to do so. But I think it completely depends on the debate that you're having, And then what was the other thing that you said? And then you mentioned at the end that if an opinion is backed up by empirical evidence and consensus, does that not make the opinion cease to be an opinion because it's now a fact? Of course, that would be true in most or maybe some cases. But then, as you say, if it's backed up, if it becomes a fact, then it's no longer an opinion. And you can't argue a fact. If a fact is truly a fact, then there's no debate about it. It's proven, right? There's no way to argue that. So that would be in a completely different realm. It wouldn't make sense for anybody to try and argue a fact. So, of course, if an opinion ever does evolve into a fact, then it's no longer the same thing, and it shouldn't be debated at all, really. Although I would also like to mention that people use facts and consensus and statistics to try and back up their opinions all the time. And again, using the example of politics, it seems like in every single situation, you can have one person that has an opinion about something, and they will state their opinion, and they will back it up with facts and consensus and statistics to prove why their opinion is right. And then the person who has the complete opposite opinion somehow also has a bunch of facts and consensus and statistics that also supports their completely opposite opinion. So I think if the opinion itself ends up becoming fact, then of course that is no longer debatable. However, people many times can use facts and consensus and statistics to try and back up their opinion, but that doesn't make the opinion any less of an opinion. Maybe it's a little bit hard for me to get my point across about that without using a specific example, but I don't have one on the top of my head, so hopefully you understand what I'm saying there. From the constructive and post-modernist perspectives, every view is valid because it is born from the experiences and context of another person. I understand this, but truthfully, I'm struggling with this because how do we make judgments then on what is good and what is not good? What we should retain as a species and what we should let go, and so on. It is difficult to have values that are defended by society if there is no standard or no agreement on what is right and what is wrong. This is a really interesting paragraph, and once again, this is a nod to more official philosophy. Like, it seems that this person's maybe been educated to some degree. I have no idea what a postmodernist is, so if someone can maybe leave a comment explaining what that is to me, that'd be nice. Based on the paragraph itself, I'm picking up on the idea that the beliefs of, I guess, a typical postmodernist is that there is no right and wrong, is that everything is just perspective and opinion, which, funnily enough, is very similar to how I think. It seems like I might be a postmodernist without realizing it. Similar to how in my first video I mentioned I felt like I shared a lot of values of a Stoic without even knowing really what a Stoic was. I'm not going to consider myself a postmodernist because I don't know what I'm aligning myself with by saying that, but that is a very, very interesting situation because like you say, you understand it. Well, you say that you understand it. For me, it's just sort of like that's my natural inclination to have that mentality that everybody has their own opinions and that it's naive and stupid to ever say that someone's opinion is wrong. Now, of course, there's lots of conflict, within my own head, and I assume everyone's, when it comes to that kind of statement, because it's like, well, what happens if somebody believes that murder is a good thing? Am I supposed to say that their opinion is just as valid and okay as my opinion? My opinion is that murder isn't okay, but who am I to tell this person that they're wrong just because they have a different opinion of me? And then, of course, I can make the argument that, well, murder has a very blatantly obvious negative effect on the individual that he just killed, as well as the people that might love him or her or otherwise. So you can point at that, and that's easy to do when you're using an example like murder, but what happens when you then use an example about something a little bit more nuanced, right? It's like, what if you have some parents that raise their child in a certain way? Sorry, as always, my camera cut out. Hopefully it doesn't happen again. So I believe I was trying to use some kind of analogy in regards to postmodernism. Okay, so let's say a more nuanced example would be if some parents wants to raise their kids in a specific kind of way, and then one person says, that's wrong and that's bad, you shouldn't raise them in that way because it might affect your kid in a negative way in the future. Would that be validated? Would they be allowed to tell these parents that they're raising their children wrong and that they should raise them in this way and that you have to do this and act this way and say these things and do these things? Like, to what extent is it okay to claim that something is bad or good? Of course, it's a very difficult thing to do, and in the more obvious realms of what's right and wrong, when it comes to things like murder, it's easy, but there are many nuanced situations where it's very difficult. So I think that mentality it's a very interesting one. Like I said, I think I naturally lean towards this, what seems to be a postmodernist mentality, where I feel like nothing is inherently right or wrong or good or bad. I think everything is just perspective and just an opinion, no matter how bad it might be. Now, I think that societies can come up with what they believe is right and wrong within themselves, and that will just be down to what most people happen to think, which is a system that obviously has its flaws, but it's probably the best system that's available. I think the second that anybody tries to claim that anything is inherently right or wrong, there's a bad situation there. I think the best thing that you can do is to have some kind of consensus on what is the most common belief within this place, and then just go by that. Again, that's an extremely flawed system, but it's probably the best one out there. I mean, the reality is, if you look at history, 500 years ago, most people in the world probably thought that being gay was evil and a sin, and that you should burn for eternity in hell for it, and that was the general consensus probably of the entire world. Obviously there were many gay people that existed and many people that had nothing against homosexuality, but most people would have believed that. And then you rewind 2,000 years ago, being gay in the Roman Empire was completely fine and accepted and no one had a problem with it, but slavery existed, and slavery was widely accepted for pretty much all of human history, all the way up until like the medieval age. So, and then in the medieval age it kind of became wrong in many countries, but then it came back again in those same countries like hundreds of years later. So it's not even like as time goes on people just generally get more and more enlightened. It's just kind of like this random thing that societies, whether it's a gradual process that's built through the influential figures that exist in that time or not, I'm not 100% sure, but for whatever reason, societies just decide on what's right and what's wrong, and then it lasts for a while until either that society disappears and a new one rises, or the society naturally, gradually over time evolves and changes. It's really kind of, when you think about it, an impossible situation. I mean, I understand your difficulty with it. I would like to point out again that I don't think that anything is inherently right or wrong. I don't think anyone can ever get to a point where I don't think humanity is ever gonna finally get to the point where they figured out what's right. Like somehow the universe has just set out a set group of things that are all wrong and a set group of things that are all right, and it's our job to over time figure out what that is. I don't think that's how it works. I think that it's just a matter of, the culture, religion, individuals, lifestyles that are lived within that society, like influences. I mean, there are a million different factors that will contribute towards what is considered right and wrong. For probably millions of years, people cannibalized each other, and that was completely accepted and fine, because at the end of the day, what was important back then was surviving. These days, people's problems are related to money and career and mental illness and things like that. So all of a sudden, cannibalizing someone is considered a bad thing, because our perspectives are completely different to those that came before us, and are completely different to those that will come after us. I'm sure in 1,000 years, if humans are still around, then they're going to look back on us and see us as barbaric and stupid and unenlightened. So it is really an impossible situation, like most things in philosophy and psychology, realistically. But I understand your internal struggle with that issue. Okay, the next paragraph. The last point you tackled in the video was the one that resonated with me the most, though. When I was in my teens, I fell into this slump that I could not understand. Everything was fine in my life, and no one, not even the people closest to me, knew of my internal turmoil. I did not tell anyone because I could not understand really what I was struggling with. I guess that is the reason that prompted me to write this letter, although I don't even know if it will reach you, or if what I'm saying will make sense, or if you'll even read it. You voiced beautifully that struggle, what that struggle was. Well, I'm glad I did. I know that, this internal confusion and kind of, what would you call it, existential, is that word, crisis? I don't think I used that word right. Is very, very common in a lot of people. And I think trying to understand that is very, very difficult. And I'm very happy with my own progress, my own psychological progress, and how I've sort of developed over time to understand things. I'm very happy with that progress, and I'm, I guess, happy if I'm able to help other people progress, like yourself. As I grew older, I realized what was working me up were questions about my place in this world, what life was all about, and what the end game was for all of us. I remember I would get sad during the Christmas season because I felt all the frivolity and cheer was so artificial, and I wondered why people got caught up in it. Am I being cynical and a bitter person? I mean, it sounds like you're a cynical person, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I'm a cynical person. I mean, I consider myself to be kind of like a cynical realist, but you don't have to look at that as a negative thing. That's just how you view things. I'm the same way about Christmas, I don't put up decorations or anything like that. It all just seems kind of pointless. I think it's just, I live by what makes sense to me logically, and the entire sort of Christmas celebration doesn't really make logical sense. But that doesn't mean that I dislike it or I have a problem with it in any way. It's not something that I get really worked up about. I mean, obviously, you're the only one that really knows whether you're bitter about it. That's up to you. And if you want to be bitter about it, you can. You just do what you want to do. I think it helped when I read some of the writings of psychologists. I work in the field of mental health, who have been influenced by existential, that's the word I wanted, philosophy, to come to terms to the fact that looking at the big picture, I was nothing. I was a minuscule dust mote in the universe, If I was gone, no one would remember me. It seems a depressing thought, but paradoxically, I felt better. The thought was freeing. I don't know how to explain it, but I felt humbled, and like you said, it put things into perspective for me. It helped me to decenter from the mundane, trivial things in life and to focus on things that are more important and of value to me. It made me more resolved to make this one and only existence count. It was a really, really good paragraph, and that resonates a lot with, my belief system. And I mentioned in that video, if I remember correctly, that I do this mental exercise sometimes to gain what I consider to be perspective, where the end result every single time for me is undoubtedly that I am insignificant. And as you said, that seems like a very depressing conclusion to come to, which is why I don't ever really talk about it too much, because I know that especially if you're someone dealing with depression, it's an extreme mentality to genuinely come to the conclusion that your life doesn't matter and that everything is kind of pointless. It's a very extreme mentality, but it can have an extreme effect, either positive or negative. If you come to the conclusion that your life is worthless, then of course, for obvious reasons, that can lead down a suicidal route. Or of course it can go the other way, and it can free you, as you said. And that's exactly the same result I feel it had on me. I felt like I was freed when I sort of was coming to this conclusion in life. I felt like this weight was completely lifted off my shoulders, and all of a sudden, all of these little problems and issues and confusion and emotions and thoughts that I was having in life, they went from being this huge, confusing, scary thing to being nothing. And it's very hard to put into words, but I think definitely it being freeing is a very good way of putting it. It really frees your mind better than anything can, realizing and understanding that you are insignificant. And I think I point out many times in my last video that the reason why that helps so much is probably because if you are insignificant, then all of your problems are less than insignificant, right? They're just a tiny little slither of what make up your existence. So I really like that paragraph. Anyway, I think I've rambled on long enough, and you must think it weird that you get such a letter from a stranger. Perhaps this lockdown made me yearn for a human interaction or someone whom I can discuss such thoughts with. I don't think the people around me now can appreciate such ideas because they are so preoccupied with the daily tasks of living. By the way, I haven't watched your video while you talked on Stoicism, but it got me interested in revisiting my own philosophy lessons back in college. Luckily, I saw an MOOC offered by University of Edinburgh, and I started on it last night. I don't know what an MOOC is, and yes, this person studied philosophy, it seems. I appreciate the letter, the email that you sent me. It was an interesting read, and I'm glad that I'm able to turn it into a video. And I think these types of videos where I talk about these kinds of things really are the perfect types of things for interaction. They're the perfect thing for dialogue and conversation. So, if anyone else who's watching this right now also wants to send me an email with their ideas and thoughts, feel free. I'm not going to make any promises. I'm not going to say I'm going to read your letter out on a video every time or anything, but if that's what you want to do, feel free to do that. I hope you're okay. You seem a bit despondent in the video. For what it's worth, I think that our existence does count to the people that our lives have touched, cliche as that might sound, even peripherally. After all, even without knowing it, you touched mine enough that at this moment I don't feel that alone, even if I'm just a speck in this vast universe. Got a bit dramatic there towards the end for my liking, but I get what you're saying. I had to look up the word despondent because I had no idea what it meant, and I think it just means like I looked like I didn't have any hope or something. I understand that. I'm not very emotive with my face, right? I'm kind of like straight-faced a lot of the time. when you combine that with the things that I'm talking about, sort of deep philosophical ideas, especially because mine a lot of the time can seem quite bleak on the surface, even though all of my ideas have had very positive effects on me. They do seem kind of negative and depressive and bleak when I say them out loud. I realise that. And then on top of that, I'm sort of speaking slowly and quietly. So I understand why I might come across as if I'm deeply depressed or something. But maybe I should take this time to mention that I'm very, very happy with my life. I'm happier than I've ever been. And I feel like I'm dominating, honestly, in the realm of my own mind, which, as far as I'm concerned, is the biggest success anyone can ever have. I've come to the conclusion that being in control of your mind is the battle. It's the only real battle that exists in anyone's life, and if you win that battle or that war, or however you decide to see it, then you are successful. It's gotten to a point where that's how I now measure my success, on how happy I am. And a huge part of being happy has been to take control of my mind, to take control of how I think and how I feel in any given moment. And of course, it's a constant struggle, and it's very, very difficult to do, especially consistently, but it's something that I'm very confident I can do well now in my life. I feel very happy, even if I don't seem like it sometimes when I'm talking like this. The camera cut out again. My point was, I'm very happy, even if I don't seem like it. But that's the end of the email. I'm sure this video is going to be a decent length of time. I hope it wasn't too boring for people. And if it was boring, I hope it at least allowed you to fall asleep. In my next video, I'm going to be reading out some more notes I've been making. I've made a lot since my last video. And like I said, if anyone wants to leave comments or send me an email, feel free. I'm not going to make any promises of interaction, but I'm always happy to read it. Bye.